We're talking about the word Christian. This is the fourth sermon in a sermon series. And the big idea to the sermon series is that you can be a Christian and believe just about anything. You can be a Christian and behave in just about any way, because the word Christian is not defined in the Bible. In fact, we have learned that it's only in the Bible in 3 different places. It's never used by Jesus himself. And the way in which it is used tells us that Christian was first a derogatory term. It was a label that outsiders referred to people who were inside a movement. Jesus had a different name for his followers, and it was what, church? Disciple. Wow, you guys are really catching on. You guys are smart. This is good. Also tells me that, what I'm saying is sticking. Because that's the point, right? We want this to stick in your lives. And Jesus wants you to be a disciple. Because a disciple is very different than Christian. Christian, like I said, is not defined, but disciple is defined. It has clarity. Therefore, it has power. Jesus defined disciple this way. He said, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples. And how does one know that you're one of his disciples? Come on now. Here's the second part. What is it? Love. Let's say it together. Love. Right. If you love one another. By this one thing. Not your church attendance. Not how much scripture you can quote. Not the mission trips you've been on. But it's how you love one another. And the early disciples, they bought into this. They put this into practice. So much so that if you go into Rome today, there is crosses everywhere. On top of buildings, there's crosses everywhere you look. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves and you start to think, well, of course there's crosses in Rome. The Pope lives there. There's got to be crosses, right? That was not always the case. So I want to take you back to 64 AD, about 30 years or so after the ministry of Jesus. And there was an emperor that we have talked about before. His name is Nero. And Nero had this great plan for the city of Rome. He wanted to change up the city. He wanted to do a big building project. And the problem with his plans was that there was already houses and business in the area that he wanted to do his project. So what did Nero do? He burnt down that part of the city. And then he had to find somebody to blame. And we learned that it was actually these Christians, this knockoff Jewish religion, that Nero decided, hey, we are going to put the blame on these folk. So he sent out his henchmen and his road warriors and began to round up all the Christians. And he'd bring them to what was called Nero's circus, which was not a circus at all. No clowns or trapeze artists at this circus. It was a place where the brutality of Nero and the Roman Empire was put on display for the entertainment of the masses. He took a minority group and blamed them and then used them for entertainment. And if you were a Christian or a disciple, whatever you want to call it, if you were part of this knockoff religion, you might get rounded up and become part of the spectrum. So I want you to imagine that we're outside of Rome, just outside the city limits, and behind the barn are 3 or 4 Christian families. And the children are crying because they're hungry, and the men are terrified, and the mothers are trying to comfort the children. And they've left everything behind because they know if somebody finds out they are Christians, there's a bounty on their head. They're going to get rounded up and become part of the spectacle that perhaps some of their friends and family were subjected to. And imagine if you or I were to talk to them, and we were to tell them about the church today, about how it's spread all over the world, how it's transformed the world. Christianity has transformed the world. We can talk about how it's transformed it for good or better, but it has transformed the world. It's spread all over. And you would say to them, in just a little bit of time, 300 years, which is not a whole lot of time in terms of all of human history, in just that amount of time, you wouldn't believe what will happen. That Roman emperor who is trying to kill all the Christians, that very same office will be held by a Christian emperor. And they would say to you, there's no possible way. I mean, have you been paying attention to what's going on? I mean, the Rome is forever. Jupiter is forever. The religions of Rome are forever. But this movement that was started in this no-name place by this no-name preacher with a bunch of misfit disciples. There's no way. But we know that in a matter of time, Rome would be covered in crosses, and not the wooden crosses of persecution, but stone crosses, metal crosses, ornate crosses. And the cross would symbolize something very different. It would symbolize God's ability to triumph over evil with love. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to go back to the speech that started it all, to the sermon that started it all, to the message that got this little movement from small, faraway places off the ground and began to transform the world. So it's called the Sermon on the Mount. It starts in the 5th chapter of Matthew. We're going to read through verses 1 through 6, or I'm going to work with those. But if you're not a Bible reader, let me just make a plug for the Bible here real quick. If you're not a Bible reader, the Sermon on the Mount would be a great place to start. It's 2 chapters, or 3, actually. It's 5, 6, and 7. Excuse me. It'd be a great place to start. Because in this speech, you get the essence of what this movement was to be all about. So you ready to hear the beginning? Can I get a yes? Yes. I know it's raining, it's dark, are we alive in here? Can I get a yes? Ready to hear the beginning? Yes, yeah, right, because this is the speech. This is exciting, this is powerful, and this is how it begins. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, right, he's drawing crowds. Why did he draw crowds? We learned this some time ago. He drew crowds because he taught in such a way that it was easy to connect the dots between his lessons and your life. That was the point. And he drew crowds everywhere he went. And he went up a mountainside and sat down. And his disciples, there's our word again, his disciples came to him. And he began to teach them the lesson that sets off this movement that transforms lives and changes the world. And he starts this way. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Really? That's how you're going to start? Blessed are the poor in spirit? This is the beginning of the speech? You got more than that, Jesus, right? Yeah, I got more. Here we go. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The speech that began the movement that changed the world. Poor in spirit, people who are mourning, who are sad. Come on, Jesus. Yeah. Blessed are the meek, the humble, the gentle, the sensitive, the meek. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Come on. All right. Jesus got word. Come on. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Matthew, are you writing this down? I'm not sure if I should be writing this down. I mean, what is this? Maybe he'll do a miracle, I mean, that would be interesting, Blessed are the merciful, pure in heart, the meek, poor in spirit, the mourners. This is the speech that sets it all up. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Jesus, come here. Peacemakers. Are you aware of what happens when you make peace with Rome? You get swallowed up. You become part of the mindless, faceless, tax-paying horde. Rome will consume you. Peacemakers? You don't make peace with Rome. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you. When's the last time you've been insulted? You think about that? Yeah? Right? Yeah. Police officer, right? Do you feel blessed? Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice, be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Some of you know about the prophets. Many of you probably don't, but the prophets were a group of Old Testament characters who spoke the truth about God and then got persecuted and many of them murdered. This is the speech that started things off. Exciting, right? Yeah, I think that's probably how everybody else responded too. imagine the disciples that are like, okay, let me get this straight. We are poor, sad, meek, hungry, merciful, pure in heart peacemakers who will be persecuted, insulted, and falsely accused, all because we are disciples of you. That's us. That's how you're starting this movement. At this point, Jesus kind of takes a step back. He says, all right, we'll get back into that in a moment, but just forget about that for a second. I'm going to give you two word pictures, two images that will describe who you are and how you're to be in the world. You are the salt of the earth. Now, in ancient times, in the context in which Jesus was preaching, this is not new news to most of you, there was no refrigerators, right? There was no deep freezes. So salt was used as a preservative. You all know what a preservative is, right? Well, here we go. A preservative, a substance added to food to prevent decomposition due to chemical change or bacterial action. See, now you can't say you didn't learn something in church. A substance added to food to prevent decomposition. And Jesus is saying, let me give you this word picture. You are the preservative of the earth. If you don't add preservatives to food, it rots. If you don't add preservatives to food, it stinks. It decomposes. If you do not preserve what is around you, it will rot. If you do not preserve the good in your relationships, they will begin to stink. If you do not preserve the good in your community, it will begin to decompose. You are a preservative. This is one of the images Jesus gives his disciples. And you might be thinking, well, you don't know the world that I'm living in. This is hard to preserve the good. But let me bring you back again to the world that Jesus is speaking into. It's a world where might made right, where women had no rights at all and children had even less rights. It's a world where if you wanted to know what ethics were or morality was, you went to who was in charge, because that's how things were done. It's a world that is hard for us to imagine. The closest we can get to it is going to some of the places in our world today where they still live this way. What is hard for us to grasp is what we think is common decency, common morality, common sense. It was not common at all. It was learned. Common sense was not common in the ancient world. And in fact, it's not common in much of our world. It's a learned behavior. And this group of disciples, they began to spread their influence because they realized that they were salt, that they were there to preserve. And they were spreading this worldview that began in Judaism, but grew even more powerful within the Christian movement, that there is one God who created all the earth. Which means that every person you're ever eyeball to eyeball with, every person that you ever come into contact with, is a creation of the creator of the entire universe. So you better be careful how you treat them. And they better be careful how they treat you. For all of us are beloved and cherished by this God. All of us have been created in this God's image. Red, yellow, black, or white, they're all precious in God's sight. This is the worldview that we assume in Western culture as just being common sense. But it's not common at all. It was learned. It was spread. Because a group of nobodies from a no-name town began to learn that they are salt, that they are preservers. And so what that means for you is that your presence makes a difference. You are created in the image of God. You have the Spirit of God in you. And so you are important. Your presence, when you show up, it matters. You might not feel that way. You might not see other people acting that way. But from God's perspective, your presence matters. Because it's the second picture. You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. A town placed, NIV translation doesn't use place, but the Greek is more appropriate for place. A town placed on a hill cannot be hidden. A town intentionally placed on a hill. Why was a town placed on a hill? Anybody know why a town was placed on a hill? Yes, Megan. So it would be what? So it wouldn't be flooded, right? Yeah, for security reasons. Right? So it would be safe. And so it would be seen, right? Right? They didn't have GPS and iPhones back then. A town is placed on a hill. And you are alike. And like a town, you've been placed in a certain place. You've been placed by God. In other words, you have been positioned strategically. Right where you are. In this stage of life. You might be thinking, I'm not placed strategically. I got transferred from Cincinnati. I'm not even supposed to be here, or whatever it might be. But from God's perspective, you've been placed strategically in your marriage, in your job, with your family members, with those co-workers, in this church. Now, I asked permission from two of our church members to share a little story. Norma Fields and Leah Knapp, who were back there, placed strategically in the back. And I'm going to tell you why they're strategically placed there. Because both of these wonderful saints of our community have been encouraging me as your pastor since I arrived. And each of them, I had a conversation. One was with Norma, and it was right before we did that big church clean-out day. And she came up to me and said, Pastor, because of my age and my condition, I just can't lift huge tables and clean out the storage room, which I said, I can't believe it, you're failing us as a church, and all this. I said, of course you can't. But she's been strategically placed to offer what God has given her to offer in this stage of her life. And same with Leah. Leah told me, I visited with her, and she talked about how she's always a doer. And then on her best days, she's getting up and doing dishes because she's got to do something, because that's how she's been contributing. But as age has unfolded, it's harder and harder for her to contribute in the ways that she did. And I told her, I said, Leah, I don't know about the rest of your life, but I can speak about your impact on my life. And every Sunday, it's part of my ritual to go up and get a hug from Leah so that she can say, I'm so happy you're here, Pastor. And that means a lot. Because I hope that when I'm standing here doing this thing right here, that you guys are like, dang, he's kind of confident. Yeah, he's got it. But that's not the way it feels on the inside. Right? You try coming up here and talking for 25 minutes every week. Everybody needs encouragement. All of us. Norma, Leah, strategically placed. I get like my first hug after I preach the sermon wondering, was that any good? And they're like, hey, you did good. It's good for my soul. I need that. And you need that. And others need that. You've been strategically placed. I don't care what others say. God is saying, where you are in this life stage, you've been strategically placed. Jesus goes on, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Now, some of you are putting your lamp or your light under a bowl right now. Some of you are refusing to let it shine. Some of you are saying, hey, if I just get to this next stage of life over here, or if it was just like it used to be when I had these things going on, then I'd let my light shine. And Jesus is saying, hey, that's putting your light under a bowl. Don't do that. Rather, put it on a stand so that it can give light to everyone in the house. You have a combination of gifts given by God and personal life experiences that nobody else has. Nobody has that combination of gifts given by God and personal life experiences that you have. And so you have a unique light. Don't put it under a bowl. Put it on a stand. Remember this? This is one of those just, I can't believe he's starting this way, statements that Jesus made. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the humble. I like the word humble better. That translates better for me. That makes more sense. You know what this means? Let me explain by telling you what it doesn't mean. A lot of us saying, I need to be in a better place. I need better people around me. I need more resources. I am better than these circumstances. And so we spend all of our time whining and being negative about what is happening, and we don't accept that what we are facing right now was given to us by God, that we've been strategically placed. When you are dissatisfied constantly about where you are and the things around you, you inherit nothing but pain. But when you are meek, when you are humble, when you're able to say, God, while I wouldn't choose it for myself, you have strategically placed me right where I am, and I accept it, I submit to you, I am humble enough to believe that you can use me even in this place. Then you inherit the earth. Then there is no place that you can't be a blessing or a light. I'll pull out my phone because I got to share this poem with you guys. I heard it long ago. It says, Father, where shall I work today? And my love flowed warm and free. Then he pointed out a tiny spot and said, tend that place for me. I answered quickly, oh no, not that. Why, no one would ever see. No matter how well my work was done, not that little place for me. And the word he spoke, it was not stern. He answered me tenderly. Ah, little one, search that heart of thine. Art thou working for them or for me? Nazareth was a little place, and so was Galilee. Our Lord, Jesus Christ, who changed the world, who started a movement that changed the world. He started in a no-name place. In fact, one of his disciples even said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? That's how bad Nazareth was. So if you think that you're coming from a place that keeps you from being able to be a light, the example of Jesus says, no way. And if you think you're in a place that's too small, your influence is too small, whether you're retired or you're in a work situation or a transition in life or you're a teenager, Jesus was from a small place. Look what he did. Jesus goes on, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. If you let your light shine, people will be drawn to God. That's how this thing goes. And it'll be good for you, it'll be good for them. So, as you leave today, don't settle. Don't settle for Christian. Christian, remember, can be anything you want it to be. Christian can say, hey, I'm so upset with this relationship, I'm not going to preserve what is good in it. Christian can say, hey, it's not my responsibility to take care of that place or that space or to bring good into my community. But if you're salt, if you're a disciple of Jesus and you're salt always preserves, then it doesn't matter what the circumstances. Jesus is saying, no matter where you are, be salt, preserve what is good. If the relationship has gotten difficult, find what's still good in it and preserve that. And then be light. Be light. Show what is good. Bring joy. I mean, salt and light, sometimes it's as easy as encouraging somebody. Sometimes God puts somebody on your heart and you're thinking, I should call them. I should reach out to them, but I wouldn't know what to do. But salt encourages. It preserves what is good by encouraging that which is good. And it shines light. It says there's hope. There's hope. Why do this? I'll tell you why to do this. I'll tell you why to be salt and light. If you're a follower of Jesus, it's because somebody was salt and light to you. If you got good in your life, it's because somebody along the way has been salt and light to you. Somebody has preserved what is good in you. Somebody has encouraged you. Somebody has provided hope for you when things were hopeless. Somebody has shown you the way. Parents, moms, if you really think about it, you can think about that person who's been salt and light for your children. And you're so grateful for them. Or maybe you can think about that person that you're hoping God will bring into your husband's life or your wife's life, who will be salt and light for them. Because you realize that your capacity to be salt and light for them in the way they need it is just not there because you're too close. You're too bound to them. And so you're praying night and day that God will send somebody into their life to be salt and light because you know that this makes a difference. You know that if you or somebody else doesn't show up, that someone you love might give up. Because we all know that life gets that difficult. It gets that dark. And so we need encouragers. We need people that can hope for us when we can't hope. And if you don't do that for somebody, they might give up. Your presence matters. You've been strategically placed to be salt, be light. This is the image. These are the images that Jesus gave to his disciples. I'd like to pray for you before we close. If you could bow your heads with me. Gracious Lord, I thank you for this message. I thank you for the powerful words of Jesus. And I ask that they might connect in the lives of each person here. That the dots might be connected between your teachings and the applications in the lives of those sitting in these pews. That they might know how to be salt, to be light. That they might know when to encourage, when to give hope. That they might realize that one person standing up to be light can ignite a whole community of people to follow you. So God, put it on someone's heart, here in this place, to stand up, to be a light. Pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ.